Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Call in at 402-489-1240 or at 800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark in. Give us a find on Twitter. Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio. At Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And for Connor Clark at C_Clark_27. Can email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com, or dial us up a couple of different ways when you find us across the Hail Varsity Network. 489-1240, 489-1240 to get in, or 800-825-5865. Can watch the show, stream us if you're into the video thing, the Hail Varsity Facebook. Make that YouTube channel at the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and the Hail Varsity Twitter at HVarsity Radios, where you follow and watch. Also the KFOR Twitter feed. Guys, some of us in the room are rocking shorts because it's mid-50s. Some of us have flannel going. That's okay. I'm somewhere in between. But a bright day to talk quarterbacks. We'll get there with Nebraska's quarterback room. A cool announcement by Casey Thompson last night. We'll dive a little bit further into one of the interviews Matt Rule did on just what he wants in a quarterback. More basketball on our mind as well, as Nebraska gears up for a strong finish. In an hour, we'll check in with Andy Markowski, Husker standout, to get his take on the men's and women's program, and also a preview for some district girls basketball action. In about 20 minutes, Mitch Sherman joins us from The Athletic. We'll pick Mitch's brain, all things Nebraska. But who had the athlete from Texas as their first pick for the first signee, or commitment, I should say? It's not signed. But Nebraska getting their first commit for 2024. Roger Gradney out of Texas, Rice Consolidated High School, a consensus 4-star standout. He's got to figure out where to put him, guys, because he checks a lot of boxes with that speed and explosiveness, the track background, a top 200 player in the country and a top 40 player in the state of Texas. So Gradney is in, sight unseen, as he's a guy that Nebraska really likes. They're in early on, and I think they're in early. They're buying stock, guys, on him before maybe his senior season blows up. Had a shortened junior season, just 5 games. He's coming back from a hip injury. But he has put up incredible track numbers, the 100, the 400, the long jump. And, oh, yeah, every highlight you see of him, there's some sort of return he takes to the house, either kickoff or punt, can catch the football, and can play him in that back 7, safety, defensive back, linebacker. So he is kind of that Swiss Army get that Rule likes. You can play football. You've got a track background. We'll figure out where to put you. Roger Gradney is in.
And just my first instinct when looking at how this guy plays, what his body frame is, he's 6'1", 190, a lot of room to put on a little bit more weight. Definitely strikes me as a guy who could be that do-it-all Swiss Army knife type linebacker that's so important in the 3-3-5 defense. And I have no inside information here on what this Husker coaching staff wants to do with him, but if the defensive side of the ball is where they decide to put him, he almost seems like a hand-in-glove type fit for that linebacker. With you mentioned the speed, his best time in the 100-meter, a 10.8, as well as a 22.4 in the 200-meter.
Well better than I don't think I've ever ran 100 on purpose.
Well, a 10.8 100 at damn near 200 pounds, that's impressive. That's impressive. The guy's got long strides, one of those guys that kind of glides where he doesn't look like he's moving that fast, but yet he's still breaking away from people. I like what I see. I think he's got a little bit to go. He only played in a couple of games his junior year because of injury, but had a pretty good sophomore campaign. I think he needs a lot more refinement as a football player, but fits that mold of what we've been talking about with what Matt Rule looks like in terms of a track guy who's got high-end athletic potential. You just got to get him there. I don't think this is a guy that's going to be ready to go right away in terms of his playing career at Nebraska, but I think give him a couple years of development, and if Matt Rule and his staff can develop like we have seen them do at Temple and Baylor, I think this could be a very high-level pickup for this Husker football team. Nice
connection, too, Connor, with Tommy Armstrong. I'm sure Tommy is letting Nebraska know about Roger, and Roger's one of the guys from his area growing up was Tommy Armstrong, a guy he looked up to, a guy he still talks with, and a guy that was just a phenomenal high school quarterback at Sabalo, Texas. And you saw how well Tommy did in Lincoln, a lot of wins under his belt as he started 4 seasons for the Big Red. So it never hurts to have that Nebraska connection, letting the staff up here know, hey, here's what's going on.
Well, it's nice to have him, too, in the area because, and Tommy Armstrong, that is, because of that perfect example right there. And to Elijah's point, I don't know if he'll be ready to go right away. And, again, there is room to put on weight there. But, I mean, the numbers are there on the track and on the football field, right? And you mentioned the tape of him. It seems like every time he's getting a return, he's taking it back to the house or something. So he's an athlete at all the positions on the field, which is a good problem to have. And I bet a lot of coaches around the country would be honestly quite jealous of Matt Rule, having to figure out, where do I put this kid because he's too athletic. So great pickup to start off the class of 24. Matt Rule continues to impress Nebraska and his staff as well. And just another really, really good start.
Well, I think you mentioned something that kind of gives you everything you need to know. That this is a guy that was playing linebacker as well as some almost nickel back for this defense. So he's a bigger body, but he's returning kicks for the high school football team, which that's not what you throwing a linebacker
That's
back
a
there.
Randy Stella tribute for those of us old enough to remember. Back in the late 90s, 2000s, Randy Stella, a great ball player. Randy was a linebacker, and every time he was on ABC returning the kick, linebacker Randy Stella back to return the punt. Oh, damn, they've got a linebacker returning the punt. But, Nebraska's made pickups. Guys have played other positions where they've starred as a returner, right? And usually it's not just, all right, Rocket Ishmael, go line up in the slot, go deep, but go bail us out with a kick or punt return. I think of DeMornay Pearsonell, how impactful he was. He is a really talented receiver. It wasn't that he was just a one-trick pony as a return guy. No, he could catch the football. DeJuan Gomes was uber talented, really good cover corner for Nebraska that made his way as an elite punt returner, was good. I think he had 4 in one season, has tied the record or may even hold the record for Nebraska when it comes to return touchdowns. Bobby Newcomb, wide receiver quarterback, of course, punt returner extraordinaire. And then a guy from way back in the Big 8 who was all Big 8 as a corner and was an all-pro with the Saints, Tyrone Hughes, was a guy that was a wingback. They moved into the secondary the latter part of his career, but Hughes was an incredible return guy, along with a guy like named Dana Brinson. I'm really dating myself, but Nebraska's found guys over the years that have been really good, all conference or second team, good at a position, but they've been first team as a return guy. What I can't give you with the size, the frame, and then the athleticism, I can't really give you a body comp on Gradney. I don't know who he reminds me of. You see a punt returner, oh, that dude kind of reminds me of X, Y, or Z. I don't have a name for you.
Well, but how many times do you see a punt returner that's 190?
It's 6'1", 190. They're usually little guys.
Yeah. Well, and again, going back to the earlier point, it's probably a good problem to have because if he's still physically able to make explosive plays at that weight, he's going to be way harder to bring down, obviously, and he can play other positions. So I don't think you necessarily need a body comp for him because if he's that unique athletically, yeah, I mean.
Be your own comp. Other football news, it's officially official with Casey Thompson last night on Twitter. Posting on Twitter, run it back. He is officially back. That's great. I didn't know that he wasn't going to be, but now we know that Casey Thompson's back. Coach Rule did a sit-down with On3 about a week ago, I believe. It was DJ Pickell. And, here's what Rule needs from his quarterbacks, wants from a really good quarterback room.
Well, I think we want a leader. We want someone that has, like, the it factor. And you know what? We want someone who's going to protect the football. We want to be aggressive, explosive, push the ball down the field. But we want someone who understands that we can't win if we don't protect the football. Watching the film, Casey's an excellent player. He's done a lot of great things. I knew Jeff from, my time at Baylor, watching my good friend Jeff Collins, who was the head coach at Georgia Tech. I believe, he's got a lot of potential. And, we have some other guys in that room, Chubba Purdy, Richard Torres, Heinrich Harburg. These guys are talented guys. And so I don't think you can ever have enough good players at quarterback. And we're gonna let those guys go out there, show what they can do, and go compete it out.
Well, good. We'll probably end with 4 in that room if there's not position changes or departures. Casey, to me, has the it factor. Casey, to me, from a leadership standpoint and a guy that has high standards, he's that guy. He's just needed more help around him. He's made a lot of plays. He's got to stay healthy as well. And I think you drool at the upside and ceiling of a guy like Sims because of his speed and his dual threat ability. You don't know really what you got, but we'll get a better chance to see a guy like Harburg. Torres has been coming off injury. Don't know where Smothers is in the mix. And then Chubba Purdy, how much of his brother can he be like? Sorry to go there, but it makes me wonder, okay, where Chubba's a guy that has had elite opportunity in his college football life when it comes to what schools to go to. You don't go to Florida State if you're a slouch. There's a lot of talent. And I liked what he was doing with his legs against Michigan before he got Mahomes. So, So I think you've got options. How many can you keep? How many can you groom? And can those guys that don't win the job stay patient and get better versus looking elsewhere? And I know some of them have already transferred, but that's just the question I have. I do like Casey, and the question to me is about Casey's health and how much more can you incorporate him in a quarterback run element of the option.
See, that's where I was going, because whenever you listen to Matt Rule's answer, as he's telling JD, is we like what we saw in film from Casey Thompson last year, but Sims is a guy that, I've always respected, came highly rated from Georgia Tech. And
you don't say no to a guy like Sims.
You don't say no to a guy like him, and I think reading in between the lines, when you listen to that, it's almost like Matt Rule saying, and this is a guy that we think can run the offense. I think the question is Casey Thompson going to be able to fulfill all the duties that Matt Rule and Coach Satterfield want from the Husker offense, which, as you mentioned, I'm sure is going to include quarterback run. Because when you look at Casey Thompson's stats last year, 2,400 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Mm-hmm. It's not setting the world alight, but it's good enough to get you to a bowl game. And then you also combine that if you get some better protection for Casey Thompson, I think you can probably eliminate 2 or 3 of those interceptions. When you have both interceptions against Illinois were due to pass rush, forcing Casey Thompson to get the ball out and usually inaccurately.
How about missing games due to injury?
Yeah, you mean you're going to throw another couple hundred yards in there? Maybe a couple more touchdowns. It's not anything to sneeze at. I think that's what Matt Rule's saying, though. He's like, yeah, we like what we saw in film from Casey Thompson, but it's going to be wait and see, can he run the offense the way we want our offense to be run?
Well, you mentioned Jeff Sims' ceiling. I don't even think we've seen Casey's. I think he's a lot of room to grow, because you mentioned he needs guys around him. Now, that's not discrediting the people that he did have around him last year, because there was still a lot of talent out on the field, but obviously protection was always an issue.
Protection and give him a run game. I mean, give him a run game like he had at Texas with a better offensive line and some toys at receiver. Your touchdown to interception ratio is probably going from 2 to 1 to maybe it jumps to 3 to 1.
I mean, he was 24-9. His final year at Texas, touchdowns to interceptions, which is almost 3 to 1, and the yardage was comparable. I think it was also about 2,400 yards, and the completion percentage was comparable. So yeah, a run game, better protection, and he's almost getting 3 to 1 on his interception touchdown ratio, which you will take 9 times out of 10 in modern college football.
He's mobile enough too. I mean, I love his athleticism when he's decided to tuck it and run, or he has the keeper on that zone read inside the red zone the few times. I mean, Nebraska, that was their go-to. The quarterback kept on his zone read, and found their way into an end zone, but it was too many times between trips to the end zone. You'd have a good script or two to start the ball game, and then it was a Sahara Desert for the offense till maybe they forced a turnover.
Well, the question I have for both of you then is, do you think we would see maybe at all early in the year a two-quarterback situation going on? Because
it's a great question.
I believe in the old adage that if you got two quarterbacks, you got none. I think you go try to find that number one guy. And I would even go as far as to say is right now, based on what we saw in film last year, I think Casey Thompson's really talented. It's probably his to lose with just his relationship and his leadership with the guys that are already on that offense. There's going to be some new faces coming in, obviously. But I think Jeff Sims will have to come in and really blow Casey Thompson out of the water to go win that starting quarterback job.
Well, and listen, Sims has 2 years, and he wants to play now. All quarterbacks do. With Sims, could you get a year at grooming, even though, and that'd be really tough because he's played a lot of ball games. He's already played 25 games at Georgia Tech. You don't transfer to watch, but you're also going into a situation where you have an incumbent that did some nice things. I think it's going to click with each of these guys we think are your one or two with Satterfield. I think they'll work well together. You saw what he did at South Carolina. So we'll get into more of this with Mitch Sherman. Go ahead.
I think a question here to wrap this segment is can the backup go run the same offense that the starter does?
Right. Well, you might need both of them based on their injury history.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Varsity Radio presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark in today. Thoughts on Adrian to the USFL as he was picked in the second round. We welcome in with Mitch Sherman. The Athletic joins us here on Hail Varsity at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how are we doing?
I am good. Schmitty, how are you?
We're good, man. It's good to see you Friday at the make it Saturday at the Gretna Southwest game. A lot of good high school ball this time of year.
Yeah. Looking forward to the state tournament in a couple weeks. I was in Lincoln following my kids' Gretna Dragons, and we had a good time with the victory, but I've seen quite a bit of good basketball in both communities and, around the state. But the city of Lincoln this year, despite not having one of those top 3 or 4 teams in the rankings, it has some quality players, and we saw some on display down there with you in Southwest Lincoln. So, again, looking forward to what's coming up in a couple weeks.
Well, I want to go to Casey Thompson to start. Were you, I won't say concerned, but were you questioning whether or not he was going to be back? I know he put out his Twitter statement last night, run it back. Were you ever, did your mind ever drift to the fact that maybe there won't be a Casey Thompson here for Coach Rule's first year?
Well, briefly, when Nebraska was in the market for a transfer quarterback and you saw Jeff Sims come on board and heard the talk on the early signing day about Rule and his history, not his personal history with Jeff Sims, but the history that he has with Jeff Collins, who coached Sims, and how attentively Rule has followed Sims' career, or how did follow his career when he was at Georgia Tech. That was interesting, and it led me to believe or to wonder if Casey might look around. But Casey Thompson, one thing, we shouldn't doubt him. And one thing that we know about him from watching him in his time at Texas, when he stuck it out for a long period of time, it's not like he jumped after a year or two in Austin. And the way that he played, and the kind of character that he showed last year in his first season in Lincoln would tell you, I think, all you need to know about what he's going to do if faced with a challenge. And he's going to take it head on. So I'm not surprised from that standpoint at all that he's planning, that he's coming back. Not planning, he is. He's coming back. He's doing well in his rehab. It from the sounds of it. And if we know something about Casey, it's that he's going to find a way to get out there and compete in some way during the spring. Now, is he going to be chucking touchdown passes in the spring game? No. Is he going to be facing a pass rush or taking hits from Nebraska's remade defensive line? No, but there are a lot of ways that he can compete and he can show his stuff for Marcus Satterfield and for Matt Rule, and he'll be there every step of the way. I mean, he's got his master's degree, so he can just get his PhD in football over these next few months.
Mitch, what is your concern level with Casey Thompson's injuries? I think it's better this year, Nebraska having more of an insurance option at a potential backup quarterback in Jeff Sims. I'm not saying Jeff Sims isn't going to win the starting job, but that's how I see it right now. Is I think it's still Casey's to lose. Are you concerned about Casey's health moving forward?
Well, he's been a starter in college football for 2 years, and he's faced injury issues in both. Now, the situation at Texas was kind of a freak injury. Hurt his thumb, hit on the helmet of a lineman, I believe, or a thumb injury is not one that necessarily comes as a result of being injury prone. It's a freakish kind of thing. But at Nebraska last season, he had a number of bumps and bruises, and that's a result of the offensive line's failure to protect him. I think some issues with the way that the offense ran, and then Casey's not the biggest guy in the world, and the Big Ten is a physical conference. So I think, if Nebraska had no quarterback depth, or even if it does have quarterback depth and he's the guy, it's something that has to be on your mind. Is he going to be able to survive a season without having an injury that keeps him out of games or hurts his ability to be the best quarterback that he can be? So, unless you're Josh Allen or somebody like that, that's the concern in any kind of big-time football. Sims himself, a bigger guy, had all kinds of injury issues at Georgia Tech. So having both of them is a big plus for Nebraska.
Mitch Sherman is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mitch, last segment we were talking about the potential of Jeff Sims being able to run the ball and run the offense maybe more how Matt Rule would like. And I posed the question to the other two guys in the room, and I wanted to pose it to you as well. Do you think that we could potentially see a two-quarterback system early on in the year? And if so, would that be a good thing?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that they're going to want to find a guy, and that's just kind of the way that I believe that these coaches look at the game. That I've not heard them. They've not told me that in regard to these specific two players, but I think that's just in general when you're several months away from a season and you've got a competition. It's not like tight end. You want to find somebody who can step into that role as the starter, and I think that's how the quarterbacks would want it too. Both of them would want to have a competition where it's settled in August on one quarterback. That's generally just an easier, more efficient way to handle it. If you have to use two because of the way that it's being dictated by the offense or there's an injury situation, it's nice to have that in your back pocket. But I don't think you ever sit in March going into spring practice thinking that it's a possibility that, or something that you want to look at, a multi-quarterback system.
Mitch, thoughts on Nebraska's first commit for 2024, Roger Gradney? Gradney, a pretty talented return guy, but also can play a lot of different spots on the field.
Yes, from deep in the heart of Texas. I had to get a geography lesson on where Altair, Texas was located this week, and Nebraska went way down in the corner between Houston and San Antonio to find Roger Gradney, listed as an athlete, but, looks like a guy who could be a defensive back. Obviously he's in that mold of player that Matt Rule likes, who has track times that jump off the chart. He's a sub 1,100-meter guy. You'd expect him to improve on that with two track seasons left in his high school time. So this is the kind of player in a number of different ways that Nebraska wants to build its athletic profile around. You see it with players like Jalen Lloyd and Bryce Turner and others, Malachi Coleman, many of the players that Nebraska and Matt Rule either solidified or went out and found themselves in this 2023 class are right there with a guy like Gradney. So that's one thing. And then the other is just the continued emphasis on the state of Texas. And it's not just Dallas-Fort Worth or Houston or San Antonio and Austin, the heavily populated areas that generally produce the players in the state. The fact that they went and found somebody from a corner of Texas like this, and he's the first member of this class, and that he's a top 250 player nationally as a consensus, it speaks to their reach in Texas. This is not go fishing and go find one guy or two guys from the populated areas of the state. They want to cover Texas completely, and this is why, or a big part of the reason why, Garrett McGuire and Bob Wager are on staff, and why they went out and got Susan Elza. Now, she has a tremendous amount more value than just having relationships with the state of Texas, and obviously she's not recruiting off campus, but the overall reach into that state, I think, is going to continue to be a huge storyline with this 24 class, as it was with 23.
And Mitch Grady's guy, he's from Texas, but I think he's got a little bit of Nebraska in him. He put up a tweet a couple years ago, said, "People ask how I get so strong. This is how." And it's a picture of him out baling hay. So that seems like a hand-in-glove fit for Nebraska, right?
Hey, there's parts of Texas, and I think he's from one of them, that are as rural or more rural than the most remote areas of Nebraska. It's a big state.
All right, Mitch, before we say goodbye, a couple of minutes here. Husker Baseball, a rough weekend for Coach Bolton Company. They'll try and regroup. I know there's media availability tomorrow. They'll head to South Alabama this weekend. But, reaction to 0-3-1.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really tough to see. And, you always cut a team like Nebraska and teams in the Big Ten and Northern teams some slack at the very beginning of the season because they haven't had the ability to prepare the way somebody like San Diego does. But to go there and go winless in 4 games and to lose that last one yesterday the way that they did in the 7th inning, look, I know Will Bolt expects to have a completely different kind of team when they get home for Big Ten play and when things get going in March. But this just shows, how much improvement that they've got to make. And if there were, I wouldn't think that they would have needed a lesson in that after the way that last year went. And I know a number of these players were not on that team, but for the guys who returned and who are the leaders of this group, I think they learned everything they need to know about where this team needs to be in 2023 to compete and have success in the Big Ten. And that obviously was a bad start. And I'm sure it just left a horrible taste in their mouth to give up 6 runs in the last inning and come home with a tie, which is just, ugh. But, this is baseball, and, one bad weekend doesn't ruin the season, and they'll have an opportunity to go right some of those wrongs in South Alabama and then play some SEC teams, I believe. What, is that next weekend in Minneapolis?
I think so. Yep, Vandy and Ole Miss, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity to improve on this stuff, and we'll see. But it extends what was a difficult stretch last year into the first weekend of this year. That's not good to see.
Mitch, last thought here, about 30 seconds left. Will Bolt circled the bullpen being able to throw strikes is one of the big problems over the weekend. Is that cause for concern for the future? That seems like a pretty big part of baseball.
It's where things start. On the mound, you got to throw strikes, and that's the number of runs on the hit total that San Diego scored yesterday. I mean, Nebraska gave them opportunities, and San Diego, to its credit, capitalized. But it was hard to watch, hard to listen to that kind of baseball where you just give opportunities away. So, yeah, that's if you're going to go back to basics on the mound with Will Bolt and with Jeff Christie, the pitching coach, throw strikes, and if they hit them, you can live with that.
Mitch Sherman with us. Mitch, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
Okay, thanks, guys.
There he is, Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman, where you find him on Twitter. We'll dive into some of the comments you have in the stream. Can always watch the show on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or Hail Varsity Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Some reaction there. Good stuff from Mitch. Adrian in pro football. That discussion coming up.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Good stuff from Mitch Sherman. Andy Markowski talks round ball with us in about 25 minutes. We'll get into Adrian Martinez and his pro prospects. As the USFL pulling the trigger on Adrian, Mike Riley says let's get him and get his rights. We'll spend some time here in about 30 minutes on that. But we've been talking quarterbacks, specifically in lieu of Casey Thompson's announcement that he's coming back for Nebraska. So, Josh, a good question and comment here in the stream. You're welcome to catch us in the stream or on email, chris@hailvarsity.com. Can also watch the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or both Twitter handles at KFOR Radio, at HVarsity Radio, and interact that way, 489-1240 as well. But trying to find our quarterback is great, but I'm concerned, how are we going to actually protect him and not get the crap beat out of him week after week? Josh, you are on point with many Nebraska fans. All right, awesome. The guy can throw. He can find somebody deep. He's good on crossing routes. The check down's glorious. Yeah. But he's wearing Memorial Stadium, man.
Well, it's kind of something that I hit on back in the first segment is you can probably eliminate 2 or 3 interceptions from Casey Thompson's ledger last year if the protection's able to hold up, because it's him getting drilled as he releases the football, and you got a ball that just flutters right into the arm of a linebacker or a free safety. You can probably eliminate 2 or 3 interceptions, and obviously that's not how football works. You can't go back and say, well, if he was protected, he wouldn't have thrown this pick. It's not a guarantee, but I'd venture to say he wouldn't have thrown 10 with better protection last season.
I don't know that you beat Illinois, but you had the lead against Illinois. You lost to Minnesota, you lost to Wisconsin, Michigan. We're not going to even bring that into the conversation, but you beat Iowa with him. And you found a way against Rutgers with him. You beat Indiana with him. Wasn't really his bad against Northwestern. Okay, so listen, he is a difference maker for a team that went 4-8. He was a difference maker for Texas when he had a good thumb, right? And he's shown the ability to spark offenses. But as far as the offensive line question goes, that needs to be a priority. And Elijah, when are we going to know? Connor, when are we going to know about the offensive line? We'll have maybe some better feelings about depth options, but you're not going to have your perceived 5 if Big Teddy's the guy we're thinking is the left tackle. You're not going to have him this spring.
Well, I'd venture to say we're not probably going to know until Nebraska trots on the field against Minnesota this fall, simply for the fact of, you have injuries, guys that aren't going to be playing spring football, so you're not going to get a great sense of them. And also, this defense is not going to want to put very much on film come spring football, especially when you're installing a new defense. It's going to be a lot of base defense, and a standard in the spring game is probably little to no blitzing. That's pretty common because a defense, especially in a first-year head coach, first-year coordinator, the defense is going to be ahead of the offense in spring football. It's a lot easier to get a defense installed than an entire offense. So you're going to let that offense get a little bit of work in against, dare I say, soft defenses. You go out there, you play base and say, all right, go try and move the football. We're going to read and react, and we're going to see what we can do, but we don't want to go ruin your day because we're further ahead in the process than you are. I don't think that offensive line is going to get a great look at what Big Ten football is actually going to look like in the spring whenever it's 5 offensive linemen blocking 3 to 4 defensive linemen. Yeah, okay, you're going to do a lot better. Where this offensive line struggled last year was those high-level edge rushers in the Big Ten that you're going to run into, which I don't see one on Nebraska's roster right now. I think you have some candidates of guys that could be passable there, but I don't see a guy who's high-level first-team, second-team, all-Big Ten type pass rusher, so you're not going to get that look in the spring and probably not in the fall either. And Nebraska struggled with picking up blitzes last year, too. Blitzes came from weird spots, and you have a linebacker blitzing free to the quarterback, and now Casey Thompson's getting smoked in the backfield. You're not going to see that in the spring either. So when are you going to see that? Probably that Minnesota game is probably the first time you're going to get a true test of that offensive line and see where they're at. But I will say, as it stands right now, not having seen spring football, I'd actually say I'm more concerned about the interior defensive line than I am about the offensive line, which might be a hot take based on the reactions of what a lot of people are saying about that offensive line. But I like the interior defensive line, and I don't see many instant impact guys. I think there's guys that could come into their own as a Big Ten slate goes on, as you get used to the high level, Big Ten defensive football, the battle that is the trenches in the Big Ten. I'm more worried about the interior defensive line because I don't think Nash Hutmacher is the guy that's ready to step up into that big role of being, you're our plugger in the middle. You're going to be our Damian Daniels, our Darian Daniels in the middle. I don't see Nash Hutmacher being ready for that role just yet right now. So I'd say I'm more worried about what the interior defensive line can be than what the offensive line can be. Not to say the offensive line isn't still a concern. I think both are concerning, but I'm not as concerned about the offensive line as I am at other places on the team. I think a second year under Raiola could be a big jump for this offensive line.
And we'll hear from Coach Raiola, just his outlook, his prospects, the guys back in the room. He's part of the media availability tomorrow, him and Dvoracek, and, of course, Nebraska's new strength and conditioning coach. So we'll have reaction to that tomorrow. But no, what I don't know about this offensive line, and you have some of the same actors, you don't know, first and foremost, can Teddy come back and stay healthy? You've seen small glimpses, and what you've seen you like. Okay, that allows you to move Corcoran to a guard spot. Okay, or is Turner somebody they're going to build back up and put at right tackle because they've moved on from Benhart? I don't think they're ready to move on from Benhart because he came back in and took over that right tackle spot again, and it was better. And he graded better towards the end of the season. He got better. I think Raiola is going to do everything in his power to get these guys that he's had some time with, right? You got Lutovsky at guard. You got Nuri back. Scott's coming in at center. You have Piper as an option at guard, and he won a job last year. So you have dudes that you've spent a lot of time with that they believe in you and vice versa. And all right, can you work? Can you work to protect on 3rd and 7? But above all, give me some run game. Give me Anthony Grant. Give me A.J. Allen. Give me Ramir. Give me whoever else you want to hand off to and establish that ground game that the staff has talked about being tough and strong on the lines of scrimmage. That's how you're going to win in the Big Ten and control the football and air quote body blow people, right? So we can talk about protecting the quarterback. We can even get into how much quarterback run are we going to really truly see if Casey wins the job. But above all, give me a run game to help him out and give me an offensive line that can fire off the ball and make it 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5.
Well, a strong run game just limits what a defense can do. You can't be bringing pass blitzes on 3rd and 4 whenever you know this team could just hand the ball off and get 4 yards. It just limits what a defense can do in general, and really you can only bring out those pass rush type schemes, those blitzes, whenever you're getting to 2nd and long, 3rd and long. It just limits what a defense can do. It helps and takes some pressure off that offensive line. And I think you have potential of guys that can be road graders. A guy like Jacob Hood, the Georgia transfer. Mm-hmm. He's an interesting case to me. If he can go in and lock up a starting guard spot, it opens up a whole bunch of what you can do, because then you're not forced to pencil in Corcoran there. He can be one of those swing guys that can play a lot of places on the offensive line. I'm going to be watching what he looks like in the spring. Getting back to the spring football point, what does Jacob Hood look like in the spring? Is he ready to go? Is he in shape for a Big Ten season, or is he going to take a year or two of development? That's going to be a big question for me.
Well, and with Turner, let's settle him in and let him thrive. Yes. Let him develop for a year, or at least a spring at a set spot, and then not move him from that spot. We'll wind down hour 1. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, 10 minutes away, Andy Markowski, Husker standout, longtime part of the basketball community, Big Red and beyond, going to be with us as Nebraska gears up to stay hot as we near March. Who'd have thought, right? As big time win, and you're feeling good about it if you're a Nebraska basketball fan over Maryland. Can that extend out? Numbers to get in: 489-1240, 489-1240. Hail Varsity is presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. And a reminder to get buckled up, hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. The driver, one job to do, that's drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Guys, how many times did we see teams line up in heavy personnel, the jumbo package, and just power in on short yardage situations for touchdowns against Nebraska football last fall? That is the Big Ten livelihood. That is Big Ten football to a T, where it's going to be big bodies, they get lower than you, they blow you off the ball, touchdown. Interior line as we wrap up. As Matt chimes in about what Coach McBride said about Nash, we're wondering, Nash has been in the program. Him and Ty are the guys in the middle you think that can do work. And to Matt's point, if you got a guy that can handle two gaps, good luck, God bless. There's not a lot of dudes walking around that are good at doing that, but that's what Nash will probably be tasked with.
Yeah, I assume the interior defensive line as it stands right now, and with the 3-3-5, you wonder how many true defensive linemen you're going to need on the field. But right now you
need two psychos in the middle.
In terms of experience guys Nebraska has there, it's Nash Hutmacher and it's Ty Robinson. I think both those guys need a little bit of body reshaping if they're going to be playing in a 3-3-5. We've seen from those defenses that Coach White had at Syracuse that he needs his defensive linemen to be a little bit more mobile than those guys have shown on film. So what can they be next year? That kind of remains to be seen. But look who else Nebraska has there. This is why they're probably my number one point of concern for the team next season. You have Elijah Judy coming from Texas A&M, who doesn't have that much experience, really.
Didn't play on the line.
He did, but he didn't.
He's your guy that went up to that first level, but he was your edge guy.
Yeah. So he's probably making that move inside with his 270-ish pound frame, I think is what he's at right now. Might need to add a little bit of weight. And then you got Stephon Wynn. The question with him is, has he reached his ceiling? We're excited about him as an Alabama transfer last year, but didn't quite show us all that much. And then beyond that, you have freshmen. You have Machacek, which we still don't know if he's going to be an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. You have Van Poppel. You have Latufu from out in California. And I think that's it. That's what you have in your interior defensive lineman. Oh, excuse me, Vincent Carroll Jackson from the Philadelphia area as well.
Okay.
That's what you have on the defensive line, which warning bells go off whenever I read off those names. And no offense to any of those guys, it's just, are Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher going to be able to play the lion's share of the snaps next season, not fall off? Probably not. So are there going to be any freshmen or newcomers that are able to step into those roles and live up to what you need to be in the Big Ten? And what we've seen in the Big Ten is that you need experience going up against Big Ten offensive linemen in order to be successful at the Big Ten level. It doesn't matter how big and strong you are. There is an experience factor that you need in the Big Ten. Nebraska just doesn't have that.
Rotation. You need bodies.
And Nebraska doesn't have a rotation with experienced guys that looks ready for next season.
No, that's a pretty good to-do list right now if you're Nebraska. But, hey, spring schedule's released. They'll be working on it. We'll be there to cover it for you as we get ready for hour two. Andy Markowski will get us kicked off. We'll talk about Adrian Martinez and his pro prospects. What do you think? We'll get there next hour. It's Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at HVarsityRadio. Call in at 402-489-1240 or at 800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you. It's Hour 2 at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. We bring in the pride of Ord, Husker Basketball standout and assistant over at Pius, Andy Markowski with us at Markowski_Andy on Twitter. Andy, let's go back to Sunday at PBA. Are you a little bit surprised, or, man, did you see this coming?
Yeah, what a great win. Nebraska had chances to maybe go away, foul trouble, injuries, but they, just stuck to it. And, Sam Hoiberg made a couple, key plays, made free throws, made some shots, and it's a great win. So did I predict they could play their best basketball, minus Gary and Vanderbilt going down midseason? I don't know if anybody believed that other than maybe Coach Hoiberg, but, you've got to give him a lot of credit. You got to give him the leadership credit. Different players have stepped up and played well at times when they needed them. And, there are 2 games out of 4th place in the league, which, I think is a pretty good conference this year to be in this position with 3 games to play. Is just a credit for a fun season to have followed.
Andy, what do you think Fred was feeling over on the sideline watching Sam Hoiberg play so well and then go and really seal the game with that steal and bucket late in the overtime?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to coach my own kids and daughters. You want them to do well, right? I mean, I think as any parent, you love to see them have success. And, when you get to kind of be a part of that and share that, right, as a coach and a player, and then, have that lead to an outcome where you can celebrate that as a broader family, as a team. I had a chance to talk to Fred after the game, and, he's super excited, super proud. And, I told him that his wife is probably going to be petitioning him for a little bit more playing time for their kids. So he kind of joked, but yeah, it's got to be special. And so Sam doesn't feel that pressure. I mean, he's played well in a couple games, but yeah, he's a freshman with not a lot of experience. So there's going to be times where maybe he misses a key shot, or maybe doesn't make the game-winning play. But you have to give him credit. He's come in with a lot of confidence and has really been a catalyst for a couple of their wins.
What player have you enjoyed watching emerge most? It's not been a ton of minutes, but Blaise Keita has made a monster impact. We've just talked about Sam Hoiberg and what he's been able to do as a spark. You've got Kisei that's gone off. I mean, your dear friend Teron Lou's the last guy to put 20-point games in a row together to the tune of 5. And Kisei's done that. I'm not comparing Lou and Kisei, but you have the stats that are available. Who have you gotten the biggest kick out of watching kind of emerge?
Griesel coming back home, Chris. I mean, there's just Walker, how many times has he went at 7-foot centers, right, where it's like, you're undersized. How do you play the 5 at 6'8"? I mean, all of the above. I mean, there's great storylines, but Tominaga has just been fun to follow, right? A year ago, they couldn't really play him that many minutes because defensively, he was really a liability. He's undersized, but to sit there and be in the same company as Teron Lou over, not just one game, right? Anybody can maybe do some one game and be compared against the best in our program history. But the fact that he's been able to do it over an extended amount of time, getting a lot of attention. I mean, he's getting guarded right now. Coach Hoiberg and their staff, I think Walker and Griesel, being 1A and 1B, has allowed Casey to have a lot of freedom and movement. But, like I said, I have not seen anybody enjoy competition or wear it, on his sleeve like he does. And, it's been fun to follow. And, my son was waiting in line to get a picture. We kind of went down to the court after the game and took a big alumni picture with Coach Hoiberg and his staff. And, a year ago, my son probably wouldn't have been waiting in line to get a picture with Casey. So it's been a fun story to follow. And, but really all the storylines with this group has been fun. It's just, it's been a good group, and they've played themselves, with a chance for a postseason berth here, which with only 100 schools making the NIT or NCAA, the fact that you are almost in March with a chance to make the postseason is just a credit to a really good season.
Andy, I don't want to look too far ahead, but Casey's got another year of eligibility should he want to use it here at Nebraska, and obviously he can leave should he so choose. But how important do you think him coming back is for the future of Nebraska basketball, not only next year, but also beyond, as Fred Hoiberg's got to continue getting better and better as the years go on?
Well, you have some important pieces in Griesel and Walker. I call them unicorns in the sense of, Griesel can post a 6'7", Walker, you put him in the middle of the floor, is very creative. You don't see many 5s getting as many assists. So those are two pieces that are gone that you got to replace. So you hope that you can stabilize kind of the rest of the roster and keep somebody like Tominaga, another year in the program, which, you need good players to win in this league. I don't think you can just flip the whole roster and expect that culture to be the same as it was this season without keeping, a few of those other pieces that aren't, past their 5th year. So, I hope he stays. I think, for people that don't know, the foreign player, with NIL is a little different. So, I don't know if he would have a chance to go back home and play professionally and make up maybe for not being able to get NIL money here or go to another school. I hear that he really likes, playing here and representing Nebraska. So I would anticipate if he's going to play another year of college basketball, it would be in a Nebraska uniform.
Andy Markowski joins us at Hail Varsity Radio talking Husker basketball. Andy, you've been a part of a tournament run before, and I believe you were part of an NIT run as well. I want to go back to those moments. And did something flip timing-wise with those runs? Take me through how a team can stay hot and make magic happen in March.
Certainly, you have to be coachable and buy into kind of what the staff's asking you to do. And this team has continually gotten better. I think they're playing their roles. There's not a lot of I think those are the teams that tend to play well into the end of the season and then into March. I think in the long season, people start getting tired of each other. I think selfishness can start to rear its head this time of year. Those are the teams that usually, are one and done or maybe lose games that they should win, and it keeps them from the postseason run. I think, our NCAA team, we were playing our best basketball late in the year. I mean, once again, at Arkansas down 10 or 11 in that game, and we could have easily, won that first game. The NIT season that we went on a run was not that. We had lost 10 of our last 11. That was a team that was 14-1. And then didn't make the NCAA tournament, and it was just so good that we just overpowered the NIT that year, Chris. I mean, it was just, I don't know if we wanted to be there, but nobody could beat us with 4 NBA guys playing in the NIT. So that was kind of an atypical, finish to the season, and then we just, probably were in the wrong tournament based on the ability that we had on that roster. But yeah, you want to, good chemistry, and when you're playing for the right reasons and playing with energy and confidence, those are the teams that go on a run, and it appears that Nebraska kind of fits that MO.
That'd be fun to see this thing keep going, and let's just obviously see how the regular season shakes out. Minnesota comes in next week. Sparty's going to be really tough a week from tonight, and then you end at Iowa, and then if you can stay at that 10 spot, you at least get a break, Andy, right? You don't have the play-in game for the Big Ten.
I don't know if I want them at the 10.
Really?
I think this team needs some wins just because their one-loss record isn't great. Their strength of schedule is good, so I wouldn't mind seeing them out of 11 and playing in Minnesota at 14, right? That would give them another win. But to that point, if you're 11 seed, maybe that means you lose 2 of your last 3, which isn't helpful either. So I think there's some positives with getting an extra game. I mean, if they're going to win the whole thing, you certainly would want to buy on that Wednesday. There's no one that's going to run the table and win five games. But if really the NIT is what they're trying to achieve, getting an extra win against maybe a team like Minnesota as 11-14. I would want to stay away from the 8-9, even though we've played Purdue pretty tough. So an 11 gets you, kind of in that 3-6 range, which, depending on matchups, it teams that we've been competitive against. So, the fact that we're having this conversation is exciting. The NIT is much harder to make. It went from 40 back down to 32. Any conference champion in the regular season that doesn't win the postseason from the smaller leagues, gets an automatic bid into the NIT. So there ends up only being about 20-ish at-large teams that make it. So you really have to be on that NCAA bubble to give yourself a chance to get to the NIT. So, there's still some wins out there. I think Minnesota's a team that, if you show up and play well, you're better than. And then certainly Michigan State blistered us there. But I thought that was one of their best teams I've seen. So, I think it's a team that we can beat at home. And then, we've matched up pretty well against Iowa here over the last couple of years. We've had good games against them. So, I think it's 3 games that, if we keep playing at a high level, we should be right there with a chance to win late.
And when you're looking at the Big Ten tournament, Nebraska's really struggled in that tournament since moving to the Big Ten over a decade ago. I can't remember a single deep run that Nebraska has made. So, I mean, obviously the level of competition within the Big Ten is so great that it makes things tough. But what makes conference tournaments so difficult to go out and perform well in?
If you look at the Big Ten, it's like an NCAA tournament. I mean, there's not. I was watching the Big 12 last night, and they're talking the couple of the play-in games in the Big 12 are going to be NCAA tournament level teams. So, once again, you're playing teams for the third time. You're doing it on short preparation, right? I mean, being able to flip it 24 hours. So, the teams that tend to win and the tournament have the best players. And if you look at the last decade, we haven't exactly marched into the Big Ten with the best players on paper. And, I think that's one of the reasons why we've, where you look at the 90s, I mean, I played in two, Big 12 semis. They won the Big 8 in 94. I mean, we had a roster that you could come back the next game and out-talent people. And, unfortunately for Nebraska, we just haven't been able to out-talent people. And, when you're playing on razor-thin margins, playing back-to-back, I think hurts scouts. And when your best players start to play a lot of minutes, I think that catches up to you in a tournament format. So, and matchups matter. I can't remember the exact matchups we've had over the last 2 or 3 years, but some years you catch a good bracket where you got teams that you match up well against, and others you catch a draw that you just haven't played well against those teams during the regular season, and that tends to happen in the conference format as well.
Eddie, let's talk Husker women as they look to get back at it Wednesday. Tough 4-game stretch for the Big Red. They get a chance, to get right against Illinois.
Yeah, just disappointing stretch. I thought there was a couple wins there, Illinois at home, and at Minnesota, those losses are tough to overcome as you're trying to stay in the NCAA conversation. But I thought for one half we were better than Illinois, and then the thing just kind of fell apart. So I'll be anxious to see if we can make some adjustments and go on the road and beat a top 25 team. It's the 13th top 25 team we've played, so the schedule has not helped us. This year, and then you come home against Northwestern. You're going to be the 8-9 game against Michigan State, which is close to a quad one game, and then you're going to get Indiana. So if you look at those 4 games, you have a chance to pull yourself back into bubble consideration. But they're not playing their best basketball, and on the road to Illinois is going to be a tough task.
Bench production and second half defense, is that something at this point in the season you can write?
Yeah, I mean, you hope the bench can come in and play with confidence and find some baskets. Really nobody is playing great right now. I know Jazz had a big game at Minnesota, but just confidence. Everything seems to be hard for this group right now. But somebody's got to step up and spark them. Certainly the Iowa game. You had a lot of good looks, and when this team makes shots, they can play with anybody in the country. They've proven that. But when they make shots, they can lose by big margins. So, they need some bench help. The starters have to be a little bit more consistent, and then defensively, they've got to lock in and do some of the things on scout. And, it's still a good team. I still think they haven't played their best basketball, but you're running out of time for that to happen.
Eddie, to wrap up, let's talk girls state basketball. Of course, districts get rolling. Pius girls, you're a part of that staff. Just incredible regular season here, 17-5, and your district has got North Star in it, but really another strong season, Andy, for the Lincoln teams. Yeah,
just Class A and Lincoln basketball has been really fun to be a part of over the last 5 years. I mean, I think districts are pretty wide open. I mean, Lincoln High is hosting, A3. Lincoln East is hosting A7. We're hosting A6. So, hopefully we can, the Class A teams or Class A Lincoln teams can pull through districts and get to state. And, I really think state Class A is going to be, wide open, fun to follow. And hopefully there's a Lincoln involvement in state, and hopefully Pius is one of those teams. The North Star is a tough draw. We had them at home about 2 weeks ago, and it was a great game. And we anticipate a tough game from Columbus, and then if we happen to play North Star again, we're going to have to play well to come out successful.
It's good to get caught up. Andy Markowski talking basketball, of course, Husker men and women, and then high school action. Andy, we'll be seeing you this week. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thanks, guys.
Good to say hi to the pride of Ord, Andy Markowski. Good take on Big Red Hoops. We'll get back into some football thoughts as we move forward here in hour 2. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, or can dial up 800-825-5865. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Adrian Martinez, USFL, Mike Riley. It all comes together, doesn't it? We'll discuss Adrian and his pro prospects. That's next. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidt on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
You know, that rejoin's 7 years old, and we're never, ever, ever going to get rid of it.
It's in my contract, actually. I'm unable to change that intro.
It's my favorite one.
I know it is. I wish I was still in my 30s. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Open phones here till 6, 489-1240. 489-1240, 800-825-5865. We'll get into the news of the day. We spent a lot of time on the prelude to spring football and some Husker hoops. But how about Adrian Martinez, drafted by the USFL and the head coach of the New Jersey Generals, who play in Ohio? Follow me. Mike Riley went 9-1. They were bounced out of the playoffs, upset last year. And I'm not familiar with the USFL. We're familiar with Adrian Martinez. We're familiar with Mike Riley. And good for Adrian. How this works is they have Adrian's rights. So Adrian's still able to go do whatever he wants to NFL-wise. And if things don't work out in the NFL, then the USFL will own his rights and he'll play for the New Jersey Generals, who was the first draft pick overall ever in the history of the New Jersey Generals, the first round of USFL. Do you have a guess?
Isn't that Herschel Walker?
It was Herschel Walker.
I see. I watched the 30 for 30 on the USFL.
Yeah. And who owned the New Jersey Generals?
That was Donald Trump.
It was one of Donald Trump, yes. The NFL Old Boys Club did not want him a part of their party, so he went and got a new league, sued the NFL for $1 and won. And Charlie Steiner was the play-by-play man for the New Jersey Generals of the USFL.
If you like the 30 for 30 documentaries, the one on the USFL, it's one of the first ones they ever put out. It's awesome. It's old. At this point, it's probably 15 years old, but it is an awesome documentary, and it's, at least now, kind of looking back, it's interesting to see Donald Trump.
All the players.
Well, I thought it was interesting to see Donald Trump pulling Donald Trump moves before the presidency. Before that was even a famous thing to do.
It was nuts. Where you had the who's who because they paid all these dudes. Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Mike Rozier. He went to the Pittsburgh squad, the Maulers, before he went to play for the Oilers.
Well, wasn't the rationale that the USFL paid better on the rookie contract scale, and then that led to the NFL going the other way? And what was the one that kicked off? Was it Sam Bradford's $80 million deal before he even got picked in the NFL? He signed it with the Rams, and then the NFL went, all right, this guy sucks. We should probably change this rule. That's going to just ruin St. Louis.
The 2010 draft was the last time a top 5 pick just made out like a bandit. It was. Bradford's deal was incredible. Sue's deal was incredible.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Ndamukong Suh, I believe, is the highest paid defensive lineman in NFL history, and that huge deal he got coming into the league is one of the reasons why I followed up with another huge deal in Miami. And I believe he's currently the only defensive lineman to make over $100 million in a career, and we'll see if Aaron Donald can reach that point as well. But that's why Suh is so highly paid and one of the highest paid in NFL history.
Let's talk Martinez. Guys, what do you think? What do you think? Does Adrian have a future in pro football? And I can talk myself into it. What I don't know is, can he stay healthy? And I know we hammered this point with Nebraska's 2 quarterbacks that have the most experience vying for the starting spot for 2023, and Casey Thompson and Jeff Sims. Adrian was really nice, and then he got dinged at K-State. He was a big reason as to why K-State had the success they did. Their backup also picked up the water and carried it to a Big 12 championship. So with Adrian, he has shown the ability passing-wise. He has a 70% completion percentage number, did so in 2021, I think, for Nebraska. And then he was still high 60s this year at Kansas State in more of a pro style. So he's had experience in the spread and in the pro style. Mike Riley's had a boatload of quarterbacks play for him in college and land and be spot starter type guys. Rob Johnson's probably the most famous that he tutored and mentored at USC, and he had a little bit of a run in Buffalo. It was a fight between Flutie and Rob Johnson. This is 15, 20, well, it might even be longer than that. Might be, we're talking late 90s. And then you have the Ryan Leaf and Doug Flutie era in San Diego that didn't last long. So you can say a lot of things about Mike Riley, but he's a good offensive mind, and he has been able to work with quarterbacks. And I think pairing those two together is super fascinating. It's also fascinating when you look at both of their eras at Nebraska football. If Adrian can stay healthy, I mean, he's mobile enough. Can he work and get better accuracy-wise in the middle of the field? He's always shown nice touch downfield. Now, where's his shoulder at? That's been an area of concern, right? He's had to have work done on both shoulders. And from an elusiveness standpoint, the guy has been electrifying to watch, to run and get out of trouble. You know he's tough. You know he's a leader. You know he's heady. His athleticism and arm talent, maybe he's a guy that puts it together and blooms professionally and stays healthy professionally, more so than his college career, because he had a lot of great moments. He had some tough moments turnover-wise, but we've never seen Adrian Martinez until last year, quite honestly, in an optimal situation where you had a run game, where you had a good line, where you had a solid defense, where you had – he's a guy that's supposed to distribute and can take over a la Oklahoma game with his legs and the play action, but he's never finished it out health-wise. And to me, that's the big question. I hope history changes for him health-wise. But, no, if he can stay healthy, hey, why not? Why not get healthy? Why not be in a pro system and see what you can do?
Well, I think the two biggest factors is obviously health, as you just hit on. I think age could be a factor in there as well, because keep in mind, this was his 5th college season, so he's a little bit older when it comes to collegiate quarterbacks, and that may not be, a huge topic of discussion, but it's definitely something that these teams are looking for. I mean, we've had the whole, and I know Martinez isn't as old as Stetson Bennett, but we've had the whole that conversation with Lamar Jackson and that age gap. So I think age could do a little bit with it, and then obviously the turnovers that he's had in college as well. He did have a really good year at K-State. Obviously, if he was healthy the entire time, maybe this is a different story. But age and injuries, I think, are the two biggest, I guess, red flags, for lack of a better term, regarding Adrian NFL-wise.
Well, that's why, I mean, the USFL draft, it's for the guys that are on that line of being 7th-round picks, undrafted guys, where they know, going and playing a season in the USFL can get me a training camp invite this next fall, where now I can maybe use it to turn into an NFL player. It's exactly right. It's kind of like the minors of baseball, where you can go get a season of play in, and you're probably not going to get drafted this year, but it does open up the chance after the season. You have a good year, you can now go get yourself a training camp invite, go work it into an NFL team. It's almost like the NFL Combine, but it's over an entire season, and you're actually playing football. You get to go see what these guys do against, guys that used to play in the NFL, other guys that, they maybe were 7th-round draft picks this year. Now they're going to go off to the USFL, play some competitive football instead of going to one training camp, get cut, and then bounce around in some practice squads. It gives him a chance to show off what he can do as a pro quarterback, as opposed to the different systems he played at in college. And what I think is really exciting about today is it opens up the chance for Adrian Martinez to complete a Paxton Lynch. It's only been done by one quarterback in history, Paxton Lynch, former Broncos quarterback. That's why it stands out so great in my memory.
How was that first-round pick for you?
Awful. John Elway's history with quarterback evaluation is terrible.
Was that the Pride of Memphis draft pick, Paxton Lynch?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
This followed the Pride of Arizona State. No, you're 6'9's Brock Osweiler.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're thinking of Brock Lobster. Paxton Lynch was only 6'6".
I get my Paxton Lynch and Brock Osweiler draft picks confused. I'm sorry.
Well, Paxton Lynch actually set history this weekend. That's why it's called the Paxton Lynch. He's the first quarterback to be benched in an NFL game, a Canadian Football League game, a USFL game, and an XFL game. He's been benched in all 4 leagues in a game. He's the first to ever do it.
If we were to equate that to a bar drink, a shot for your 21st, Connor.
That's right around the corner, isn't it?
6 days away.
What would that be?
I'm not counting.
What would we? I mean, we've got the 3 wise men.
Paxton Lynch.
What would the Paxton Lynch
this is a question you guys got to answer.
Well, come on now.
It's a double shot that features.
No, you need 4 separate shots. You pour into one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
It just puts you down.
I think you got to go the big 4. It's got to be whiskey, vodka, tequila, and rum.
Okay.
You gotta have the 4 shots in there. I'm trying to think what else you can put in there to make it drinkable. Something from Memphis.
Hot sauce?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Hey, don't sleep on the hot sauce in the bottom of a tequila shot.
Memphis is a dry rub town, I think, but
with the apple cider vinegar, the Memphis mop sauce.
Yes,
I don't think that would go well in a shot.
I don't think so either. We gotta put our heads together for this one.
Well, Memphis, home of Graceland, peanut butter. You got peanut butter whiskey.
Okay.
You get the screwball, the peanut butter whiskey in there to get the peanut butter.
Yeah, but do you want it to taste good?
I don't know what Quaaludes tastes like.
Crush up a little bit and throw it in there?
I have no clue.
Sounds highly illegal.
It does.
This is for a make-at-home type shot.
Yeah. It's a little Elvis karate kick. Back to
how do we get back on track after
back
that?
to Adrian Martinez.
This is what we get for talking about Paxton Lynch. Jeez.
Yeah, no kidding. But does he remind you of anybody? I mean, when we talk comps, does Adrian's style remind you of anybody? And I don't want to say this name out loud about who he reminds me of.
Well, now you got to.
No, I know, but I'm going to get laughed out of the room. But doesn't his style kind of remind you of Mahomes a little bit?
Oh, see, I was gonna go Doug.
I'm just saying
Doug Flutie,
the mobility part, where on the run you're making plays. And again, I'm not saying do not hear what you want to hear. I'm not saying Adrian and Mahomes. No. I'm just saying the escapability, the extendability of plays.
I was gonna go more RG3.
Okay,
because he was an incredible runner back when he was obviously healthy.
Right. No, he was really good and then got smoked in the pocket, and there went the knee, No,
I can see Adrian Martinez being the great value version of either Mahomes or...
The great value version.
Mahomes or RG3 or... Those are both fine comps. I don't think it fits perfectly for either. That's why you can go great value, because great value Coke doesn't taste like Coke.
Lamar Jackson's his own deal because of his speed. Right. I mean, he just is. What do you guys think of game times with college football? Are they too long? Some rule changes around the corner, and how is Alabama still playing their star player on this 1-seed team? Some disturbing discussion points from head coach Oates. We'll get to that. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, talking Adrian Martinez, his pro prospects. The New Jersey Generals have his rights. He still has a chance to go make it happen in the NFL. I think there's a ton of teams that are probably going to have intrigue. We'll see if Adrian can check out medically, and I think he will, but there's just a lot of injury history, but he could be a steal for somebody.
Well, the question I don't know is, can you go play in the USFL and still keep your name in the NFL draft? That's a question that I've been trying to figure out, and I can't quite figure it out. So can he go play with the Generals and then get drafted, which would be midway through the season, I think? Is that possible? It wouldn't make much sense from an NFL perspective. I don't think you'd want a guy who is risking himself for another professional football team to even throw a draft pick at that guy, but is that even still possible? That's something I don't know.
Unclear. I just know they have his rights. Yes. He may want to see where things go NFL-wise before making a decision with the USFL.
And I believe the rights also entail it could just be a one-year contract for Adrian. So you get drafted, play a year, and then say, my contract's up, I'm going to go try to make it in the NFL. If it doesn't work out, I can come back next year.
Earthly idea what second-round contract dollars in signing bonuses are for the USFL.
I'd venture to say it's not as much as you can make an NIL at Nebraska. I'd venture to say.
But he's probably got a good fund.
But I'd venture to say it's probably also as much as you can make, if not close to it, being an undrafted rookie going in and just trying to earn yourself a spot in a football team. Yeah. That's not even veterans minimum. That's just minimum NFL salary, which is, I believe, a little over $100,000 a year.
Practice squad's usually 60 to 70, I think, and then you get elevated the last 4 games of the year, and then you get your game checks, and it works out okay. Yay or nay, is college football too long? Do you want clock changes? That's a discussion point, and it is coming around the pike. And listen, I have no issue with my Saturdays being filled with about 3.5 hours of college football. It is not an issue for me. I like it. I know it's a situation where baseball's got the clock going. You have advertising that is a part of this with all the TV deals. But do you want more of a running clock? Do you think the play clock should be more of an NFL model where it's 40 seconds that starts immediately after the play is done versus the 25-second clock you get in college football? Also, when it comes to the clock stopping after first downs, should that be a thing just at the end of the first half and the end of the regulation part, the fourth quarter, final 2 minutes? What tweaks, if any, do you want?
I will say, I think the biggest comparison between the clock stopping on the first down versus the clock not stopping in the NFL, that is so similar to me between college basketball and the NBA, with the shot clock being 6 seconds longer. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, now I know that you're getting money to play college athletics now, but it's the difference between being a professional, being really, really good at this, and being a collegiate athlete still, and you're still having to, kind of fix those kinks and still try and run a 2-minute drill to the best of your ability, despite not being professional. So I don't have a problem with that. I think the biggest problem I have is something that has to do with advertising, and is when you have a kickoff or a commercial, a kickoff, and then another commercial.
Yes.
That is terrible.
That's totally
awful.
That's totally NFL. That's pro football where, hey, we'll be right back.
Well,
we just
even the NFL's done away with that. The NFL has completely done away with commercial break, kickoff, drive. What they've started doing, if you remember, I believe this was a change from 2 years ago, was now what they'll do is they'll go with that picture-in-picture. You get the 30-second ad while the offense comes onto the field. It works out very well. College hasn't adjusted to that, and the TV dollars are king in college football right now, so I think they're trying to get as much money as they can. I don't see them cutting out advertisements, especially from those big noon kickoff type games. And it's not that big of an issue for me whenever Nebraska's playing. I'm willing to sit down and watch a 3.5, 4 hour Nebraska game. My problem is whenever it's two teams that I don't have a vested interest in that I'm trying to watch, and I go, awesome, another commercial break.
Then you flip to the other game. I mean, it's sweet.
Realistically, some things I would like to see implemented that'll speed up pace of play is cut down on all the freaking reviews. Make it a challenge system like the NFL does. Why does the booth have to review everything from every single play, even insignificant little plays? Oh, it's a 5-yard gain here on first down, and
it's a spot discussion point.
Let's check if he got his two arms underneath that ball on 1st and 10 from your own 25-yard line. Let's waste 5 minutes, and while we're at it, let's throw in a commercial break while we're reviewing this play. Make it a challenge system for anything outside the final 2 minutes of a half. And I think you're going to speed up the play by a lot, because there's going to be a lot of times where you go, you know what? We don't care. Just make the challenge system, the review system, more similar to the NFL. I think you're going to shave off some time. I don't think that they're going to end up cutting any ads, but throw some more ads into halftime. Nobody cares about halftime anymore. Those talking head type halftime shows where you have 3 analysts sitting in the studio talking about a game and then giving you the other games, nobody cares about that anymore. Those are antiquated halftime shows, in my opinion.
I just like the highlights.
Throw some more commercial breaks into halftime. I don't think anyone's going to lose any sleep over it. And last but not least,
shorten Rick Neuheisel's airtime is what you're telling me. Skippy, what'd you think? Well, when I was coaching the 84 teams I coached in the Pac-12 and Big 12, we would have done this. Thank you, Rick. No, I like the picture-in-picture that you see with the NFL. Can I also get a red zone type setup?
See, that's what
for college football
wants.
Channel. Can I get a red zone type deal for college football? That would be incredible. And
it would be.
I mean, you have it for the NFL, but just give me one of the major networks that is going to just lock in and let's go from league to league to league to league, or at least the ranked squads. And you've had more and more parity outside of your top 3, Georgia, Bama, Clemson, and
Ohio State.
Ohio State, thank you. Those are your 4 that kind of have separated the last 10 years of college football. great. Everyone else is there's an upset or two, especially in the Big Ten. I mean, someone's got to eke one out against a team that's rolling in with 3 wins. That happens more times than not.
Well, how does that affect, too, if that were to happen? Because, the big TV deal that the Big Ten just got done, I wonder how many viewers, because if you're going to watch a Nebraska game, say Nebraska's on the same time, 4 other really great games are on a Saturday.
Somehow happened.
Are you going to go towards that red zone thing, or are you going to go only Nebraska and then periodically check? Because I'm wondering what the viewership drop-off, say, on an NBC Big Ten game would be after a red zone thing is implemented, despite them paying X amount of millions of dollars.
No, fair take.
Really fast, though, to get back to the original point here before I figure it out, I will say running clock after incomplete passes is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. That is awful. That's not football, in my opinion. From every level of football, from essentially like 10-year-old football on, the clock stops on incomplete passes. That's how football works. If you want to let the clock run after first downs outside the final 2 minutes, fine by me. Okay, that's not going to change my experience that much. You don't have to change the play clock or anything like that. I think if you fix the reviews, you cut out some commercial breaks, maybe add some more to halftime, and then you're going to be running the clock after first downs outside the final 2 minutes. I think you're going to solve your issues here, and you don't have to deal with the dumb non-football type things, which is like running clock after an incomplete pass. That's stupid. I hate that idea.
Just from a referee standpoint, too, I mean, I think more times than not, they're pretty on it. There's been some issues where spot of the ball's been off, or they got a call wrong, and why aren't they blowing the whistle to review it? We'll wind down to Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, a Tuesday, Hail Varsity, presented by Currency. Podcast, find the show on your time. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Give us a rating. Tell us what you think with Hail Varsity Radio. The full show, or just the segment you want to hear. Good stuff from Andy Markowski, Mitch Sherman. Today, of course, Monday's always a Charlie McBride Monday. Evan Bland with us tomorrow. And Mike Babcock also going to join us. We'll run Shuey down as well. And more thoughts as we get closer to spring football. But a quarterback carousel discussion today as we talked about Sims and Casey Thompson. Nebraska getting the first commit for 2024. That was on our radar. Husker basketball thoughts. And, of course, Adrian Martinez and his pro prospects. What's that look like in the NFL? The USFL and Mike Riley like him. And I think Mike Riley can do some good things with Adrian Martinez from a coaching and development standpoint. There's guys that you just wonder, are they going to turn out to be better pros than college players? And Adrian had a good college career, just didn't have the wins to go along with the yards and the highlight reel. Wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to win more games than he did.
I think the key with him is, again, going to be cutting turnovers down, and he looked better with that at Kansas State last year. But you're also
6-1.
You're also aided by a very, very strong run game at Kansas State that's going to take a lot of pressure off you. You're going to have a lot more open receivers. I think that the major thing, though, is going to be that accuracy thing. There's a different level of accuracy that's required in not only the NFL, but pro football as a whole. The windows get smaller. Are you able to put it on a left shoulder as opposed to a right shoulder on a 20-yard out route? Are you able to have that perfect placement that you're going to need in the NFL? That's my question with Adrian Martinez. I think he's got a good mind for the game. I think more times than not, he was throwing it towards the right guy. The guy that the coverage would indicate would be the guy that's going to be open. He found open guys a lot. Can the accuracy step up? And if he can do that, I think he could turn himself into one of those serviceable journeyman-type professional quarterbacks that, you know what, you probably don't want him to start a game, and that's no offense to Adrian Martinez. I just don't think he's got that kind of ceiling as an NFL quarterback. But I think if he can work himself into being a guy that, you know what, he's going to be a competent backup. If he's got to come get a series here or two, maybe a half here or there, you're comfortable having run. That's what he's got to work himself in.
You get in the right system with the right coach and the right talent around you. I mean, who'd have thought Brock Purdy would have been as solid as he was in dire situation with the injuries. Now, he had dudes around him and that's the perfect situation for about any quarterback to go into. But he performed. He made some plays. He didn't screw it up, didn't wreck the car, right? So there we go. Big ball game tonight at Indiana. Make that at East Lansing as Michigan State tries to heal and return to play. Indiana comes in. That's the game to look for on the Big Ten schedule tonight. Big 12 in action. Baylor and K-State going to duke it out. A&M and Tennessee get rolling. San Diego State is in action. And then Texas hosting Iowa State, which isn't shabby.
Connor, tell me,
either.
what's your game of the night? I think you follow college basketball more closely than Schmidt and I both do. Do you have a game of the night tonight?
You know, I hate to be that guy, but I think it might be up the road in Omaha because that game is essentially for the Big East regular season title.
Creighton -6,
Against,
Marquette.
Yeah, that is for the Big East regular season title. So stakes-wise, I go there.
Good on Creighton, man, for where they are compared to where they started, and they've been dynamite. Back at you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs.